The Lord be with you. Episcopalians are so well trained. That means shush. Well, that's what it's for. It's not for praying. Okay. I'm Charlotte, everyone, and I help run the 7th through 12th grade programming and formation here at Holy Comforter. And today we're going to talk a little bit about ASP. Every year my kids are like, we just did this, but we have to do it every year. So we remind you what an awesome ministry this is. And also we go every year. So it continues to be important. You can watch the slideshow as we're speaking. Okay, so I run the programming here at Holy Comforter with an amazing team of clergy, staff, volunteer adults who give their time freely, of course, and the teenagers. And I say run, but perhaps a better verb would be that I nudge forward, and then the Spirit does some shifting around, and then everyone else runs it. It's really more of a conversation. It's constantly transforming and engaging with itself, just as young people do, just as I watch truth and love engage in their lives. And if you don't know already, much of the youth group's acceleration over the course of the year revolves around this 1 week, 7-day trip that we get to take right after school gets let out to do home repair in another part of America. And we've made a point of creating a relationship with ASP, which stands for Appalachian Service Project, because of the lack of attention given to the poverty in the region of the Appalachian Mountain Range. And I'm not exaggerating, and I think the kids will back me up here when I say we encounter what I would consider close to third world poverty conditions, and it's just a 10-hour drive away from where we stand right now. Sometimes it feels like another country. And we often work for families who in our eyes seem to be barely getting by, but who repeatedly tell us that they feel blessed and loved by God and each other. The land is beautiful, the help is needed, and you see God everywhere. A little bit about the organization so that you know why we keep supporting them. ASP is the organization we've worked for 2 years now, and they assign us families to serve and homes to repair and sort of medium support on how to do the projects they've given us. And they've been there in the mountain range since 1969, and they have a couple of things they've been using as their mantra for a long time. The best one is the basic principle that whenever a volunteer gets frustrated with how a repair looks, maybe it's not pretty, right? It's the first time you've done this kind of paint job or this kind of roof work, it's not going to look great, and you've just got to remember that we are here to make homes warmer, safer, drier, and that's as much as you can do in a week. And you have to believe that those 5 days make a difference. I did service work with ASP as a teenager, gone on over 10 trips now, and it's hard to imagine going anywhere else. So here we are. It's the 4th service trip since I arrived here at Holy Comforter. We've been to Joplin, Missouri. I see Steve Crawford in the back, to clean up and repair after the hurricane went through in 2011. Perry County, Kentucky, Wise County, Virginia, and then this year we're going to go to West Virginia. We've built a lot of floors, a few windows, lots of drywall. We've patched a roof, gotten stung by hornets. It is always hot. It is always hard work. We always sleep on the floor on air mattresses in classrooms. We are always trying to beat the rain for some project, and we are always humbled in the sight of grace. It continues a long tradition that this community has way before I got here of service trips for high schoolers, but it's my first cycle of watching youth that I knew as freshmen go on their senior mission trip. These trips are so important. I don't even know where to begin. I want to say that all service is important, and it seems to be one of the clearest tenets that people of all faith traditions are called to. Certainly, though, world religions have created a lot of destruction over the course of the world, but we have also done so much good, created the kind of miracles that you only get from a faith community that believes it is their job to serve. But I also want to say that I think the reason we are called to serve others is because we benefit from it. I can say with certainty for me that it is one of the fastest highways, if you will excuse the metaphor, to feeling that God is present. The physicality of the mission trip is definitely a part of what does that. You get prayer and relationship out of your head, out of the pew, and into your body. Trip has been described by others as a crash course in love, and I couldn't agree more. One of the reasons for the crash course feeling is that it shouldn't work. I mean, practically speaking, if I were to pitch this to you and ask you to invest, it would seem foolish. Volunteers often have no experience with construction. We require housing and 3 very serious meals a day. And the assistance from the ASP leaders is basic. The terrain is difficult and resources are in high demand. Add some 15 to 18-year-olds into the mix, and you might have the setup for a disaster, you would think. But that's not what happens. I can't tell you how it works. Sometimes it feels like we blink and the roof is just repaired. And how do we do that? 5 days ago, this seemed impossible. ASP likes to quote a woman named Ruth, who I've been hearing about all my life. She was a volunteer for over 20 years. She says, "You don't have to be a master carpenter. Your master is the carpenter." I think part of why God shows up so boldly on ASP is not despite, but because we ask young people to be at the heart of the mission. Now I'm going to be quiet and let them talk about it. You guys can use this.
Hi, I'm F.J. Phillips, for those that don't know me, and been lucky enough to work with these great kids for the last 2 years as the youth group leader on Sunday nights. I was also lucky enough to be a freshman back in 1989 for the first ever trip to West Virginia. I went all 4 years, and it was a wonderful opportunity. 23 years later, I got to go again, and as an adult, you know, it was interesting. You had the same emotions of excitement and nervousness, but now somehow I was in charge. For me, though, the thrilling part was watching these kids, these great kids, you know, go through and see and witness the same things that were such an important event for me at that stage in my life. And it's an experience I think that I welcome all of you to maybe volunteer for at some point. So it starts out on Saturday. You know, we rent a couple of minivans and we pile in and, you know, stocked with all kinds of healthy food that Charlotte picked out. We're armed with a compiled musical playlist that, you know, all the kids put together. And our drive was going to be broken up into 2 days. We're going to stop in Cincinnati. And of course it rained. It rained for the long and boring route, flat route through Indiana. Predictably, with a group of kids, in the onset we divided into the boys' car and the girls' car. So it was me and Bob and Scott, Charlie, and Henry. We learned very early on that musical tastes varied, and this compilation disc had more skips, I think, than it did plays. But it was a good lesson right out of the gate in compromise. As we arrived in Cincinnati, we found the accommodations. We stayed in a church there in the basement, and I hadn't been on the trip, you know, several years prior. I had an idea of what it might look like, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was a nice accommodations. Unfortunately, though, we had a rooftop carrier on the car that hadn't protected our stuff from the elements as well as it should have. So as we're unpacking, many pillows and sleeping bags were wet. But we didn't really concern ourselves with that because we were mostly starving. And we had to get somewhere to watch the Blackhawks game because it was the Stanley Cup. So we found Buffalo Wild Wings to fit the bill. We got up and out on Sunday morning pretty early, right after the 8 a.m. service, and made our way through much of the more scenic version of the trip, and that was terrific on the winding roads and the mountains, and really starting to see some beautiful country. The one thing we noticed, though, was very strange. Every exit through southern Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia had a Hardee's, every one of them. And after hearing that nobody had ever really been to a Hardee's before, let's do that for lunch. I don't know if you guys have been to a Hardee's, but it's reasonable to say that might be the only time any of these great kids ever go to a Hardee's. Then we made our way into St. Paul, Virginia, another beautiful part of the country. But of course, the skies opened up again as we're rolling in and as we're unpacking. Many of the pillows that were not strategically stashed got wet.
Well, speaking of wet pillows, it was still raining when we got there. It was my first time on this trip, so I was kind of jumping into things, you know, feet first, head first, whatever you want to call it. I had no clue what to expect. We got out of the car, and it was hot, and it was rainy, and there were people everywhere, and there was no air conditioning. And we were kind of just like milling around. We didn't really know what to do. And then I think it was Bob who came up to me and said that I would be a safety captain. So this meant that I would go to a site, I would meet the family, and we would check out the house just to make sure it was all ready for us to go in and work the next day. And this is where we ran into our first problem. So the house that we got to, we were planning on, I think, rebuilding the window and the walls of their back room, which was the kitchen. And as soon as we got there, we found out that there were foundation issues and that there was asbestos in the walls and that would just be unsafe for us to work there and that we basically couldn't do it. And it kind of made ASP rethink the whole house, thinking that it wouldn't be safe for anyone to work there and that we just couldn't get it done and that this family would be left with no help and basically no home. So I wouldn't call it a fight, but I had a very strong disagreement with one of the ASP leaders. I had gotten to meet this family and I had gotten to see all the hard work that they had already put into their house. They had already cleared out the entire room. They had really done everything that they could to make it a welcoming, safe place for us to work and to spend our week, and they were just so sweet, and they were so grateful for all the help that they thought they would be getting. So I kind of had a talk with the ASP leader and the group, and I basically said, we're doing this house no matter what. We'll find a way. We're going to break down this wall. We're going to get what we need to get done. We're going to finish this. So instead of doing the back room, we moved on to the front room, and we did the floors, and near the end of the week, we found out it would be okay for us to work in the back room and that we could get this house done and we could give this family what they needed.
Okay, so I'm Scott. I was not in Sarah's.
You're tall. Sorry. You're tall.
I am
There you
tall.
go.
I was in the other group, not for the floors. We were on the roof in a different site. So day one, we met the family. So Brenda was the grandmother who took the most care of everyone and the family and the house. Nadine was Brenda's mother, who stopped around for good company and loved to enjoy being outside. Alexis was Brenda's really young granddaughter, who was always really energetic and wanted to play with us the entire week. Brenda's daughter lived next door with two sons, Alex and Logan, and they were always outside as well, which we thoroughly enjoyed. Surrounding the house was lots of trash and unwanted toys and other objects. There was a little creek in the back, also full of trash, which was sort of depressing because it didn't look like they wanted to take care of any of it. Although it looked like they were really disorganized, they made up for it by being always energetic, optimistic, and really generous to us the entire week. Our job was on the roof. That was good timing. Our job was to tear down the roof and completely rebuild it. And our expectations were close to none because most of our team it was our first year. So we had no expectations except Charlotte and Jenny, who also had close to no expectations. After suiting up, we all climbed on the roof with a highly wobbly ladder, which was not fun, and that's not it. But so we got on the roof, and we saw that it was very weak, and there was lots to be done, and we knew we were definitely getting ourselves into a bad situation. If you stepped on a bad part on the roof, you would probably fall into the house because it was just so weak that there was just not much construction or work done on it in the previous time. And it was the biggest stretch of the roof that we worked on. There was some other parts on the roof that were still damaged, and we wish we really could have gotten to those parts, but we did the best we could, and we got the big stretch done. We were very confident in our work for day one and the rest of the week.
Okay, so I'm Charlie, and I was in Sarah's group working with the Campbell family.
Go ahead.
All right, and so the first thing I noticed when we showed up was the family was willing to help. They were really involved, always asking if they could do something. And the first sign I saw with that was we originally were going to work on the kitchen in the back room. And so they moved, before we showed up, they moved everything in that room out and into another room. But then when we found out we weren't going to work on it, they had all the stuff in the room we were going to end up working on. And so we had to move all the stuff back out and into a different room. And it was, the room was crammed and there's only one small walkway, so there's a lot of stuff. But so they were willing to, they helped us move it out, telling us where to put stuff, helping us carry the couches and the tables and stuff. And it made it a lot easier and quicker. And then also, it was on Thursday where after 3 days of just having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and just sandwiches in general for lunch, the daughter, who was the one who applied for ASP for the family, bought us pizza from Papa John's, which the first time I ever had Papa John's, wasn't a big fan, but it was significantly better this time. So I was thankful. And then on Friday, they actually made us chili and hot dogs, which was amazing. Which I'm also not a big chili fan, but that was also good. But so, as Sarah said, we worked on the floor, and so we had to tear up what floor was there, figure out the joists, if it was able to support the weight, and it was, luckily, so we didn't actually have to do too much tearing up, and we just put down tiles. And I think one thing that I don't think I'll ever forget is seeing Ethan, who's a young boy, help out, I think, with Sarah and Amanda putting down tiles. And just seeing him involved and really wanting to help, and it was really cool to see.
Not quite as tall as Charlie, so I'm just gonna adjust this. Okay, I was also in Charlie's group, and he brought up this little boy named Ethan, who I think he had more energy than all of us put together on the trip. He always wanted to be in the mix of it, even when we were working, and so we tried to find ways to get him in, and then at a certain point, because it was a little dangerous for him, because he was, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, we just split our workforce into two. So half the people were actually working on the room and tiling the room and all that, and then the other half were on Ethan duty. They were outside. They're outside playing with Ethan, Ethan was running us around the house, playing basketball with a soccer ball, but eventually we got him a basketball at the end of the week, so that was nice. And then playing soccer as well, and it was actually the people on Ethan duty who needed to come back into the house to rest and relax while working on the house. But this kid, he just had so much energy all the time. And his older brother, who was more our age, was this big guy who, I'm pretty sure he was a linebacker or something on a football team. He was a very, very big guy. And Ethan, he would run around and playfully punch his brother and try to get him to get a little bit more physical. And his brother Justin, instead of doing anything back, he would just encompass Ethan in a huge bear hug and just kind of trap his arms by his side, but just encompass him with a huge bear hug. And it was so great to see how much love there was in this household and how much this family cared for each other. So that was
Popping in here really fast to say that when the kids talk so much about the families, you'll notice that it's sort of equal with the importance of the work. And sometimes you get there and you're like, oh, I'm going to do all this work and I don't have time to talk to the family. But that is so much a part of it. And sometimes you're like, oh, I'm talking to the family. I don't have time for any of the work. Our house specifically was just a hot spot. I had the roof team. Not only was there were 4 generations in our house plus the family next door, but people would come from down the road and someone would be like, oh, ASP, can I fill out an application? And then they'd be like, I'm related to this person. And it was always a party. And how are we going to stay on the roof when that was happening?
And I'd like to point out that the other group, I was on the roofing team, and the group had Ethan duty, and our house had puppy duty. At the house, there were 5 or 6 puppies, or really small dogs, I'm not sure. They were adorable, and because we were working on a roof and having to throw nails and shingles down onto the ground, there had to be somebody on puppy duty to make sure that the puppies were safe. It was really important.
Hi, I'm Amanda again. Yeah, still here, still going. So I'm talking about, Charlie kind of mentioned it, so a big thing about the ASP trips are that we only have 5 days to do work. And that's really tough because you want to get down a lot of physical work, but it's hard because you want to talk to the family and you never get down as much construction as you want. 2 years ago, I think? Yeah, well, a long time. 2 years ago on Hazard, yeah. On the Hazard trip in Kentucky, my group, we were supposed to, there were 2 rooms, and we were supposed to do both of the floors. And I remember it was like end of Wednesday, beginning of Thursday, and we were like barely, like, we weren't even halfway done with the first floor. And like, we came in there, we were like, oh, we're gonna do both floors, and we're gonna go and move furniture in the other room. And we didn't, we were more than halfway through the trip, and we had barely done 1 room yet. So that's a big thing about the trips, is that we come and we only have 5 days, and it's hard because you want to do so much, but like, you have to accept that what you're doing is enough. It's just hard because you never get done as much work as you want to.
Hi, I'm Carrie Phillips, and this was my first mission trip. And for me, the house ended up representing a lot of the struggles and blessings of the week. I mean, first there were the questions: where do we start? How do we do this? Can we really have an impact? We're only here 5 days. Enter the Campbell family, a cast of characters for sure. I love listening to Amanda at the end of every day call her Grandma Beth over here and sort of rehash, and it was almost like we were listening to a soap opera, because it was just like, really? And then what? So basically, yeah, we're in it, and it's like, wow, this is more than replacing a floor or creating a safe second exit. This is a family, a home, hurting from separation and neglect. I was very privileged to spend time with the matriarch and patriarch of the family, Francis and Larry, and they were very eager to share their stories and begin healing, and just really opening their hearts. And then came Ethan, everybody's favorite, a child of pure joy and love and hope, and a reason for everyone, that family, all of us, to come together and find a way to make it work. Because those parents wanted the same thing we want for our children: a home with grass to play in. And that's what we were doing. In the end, some junk was cleared, physically, for sure, mentally and spiritually, and we got the floor done. It was a starting point for much more work to come, an opening and a threshold to a home and hearts.
We were on the roofing house, and a little bit more about that project. I mean, when we got there, the roof was a mess. There was obvious disrepair, but there were a lot of signs that some work had been attempted, and repeatedly attempted to fix it. There was even a bucket of tar that was sitting on the roof as evidence of that, and all kinds of big sticky patches all over the shingles. We learned that Gary, so I know it's going to be hard to follow all these families because we have 2 of them and they're all very layered. But Gary's the cousin and de facto father figure for this little girl, Alexis. He had been a roofer one time, obviously out deployed, and it was obvious that he had been the one making the repairs. So it's difficult. I was not a roofer myself. I have a little bit of experience, but by no means an expert at it. And so some of the procedures we were asked by ASP, because you're not given a lot of instruction. You sort of get a little guidebook, and they say, do this, and then they disappear. And you're like, okay, we're going to do that. So we get underway, and it didn't help that Gary would sort of watch from afar and seemed to be a little bit put off that this ragtag crew of inexperienced kids were going to be undoing his handiwork. On a few occasions, he would pop in and kind of pull me over and ask a question, or why are you doing it this way, or what are you doing? And so I had to sort of manage that while keeping the kids going. But what was great is we were figuring out, and it was coming along. And I think as the week progressed, his questioning of what we were doing sort of transitioned into him offering help and assistance. And he gained confidence in what we were doing on the house. And that sort of coincided with the kids gaining confidence, because I'm sure that we're sitting there on the first day just as we were going, what are we doing? How is this going to get done? But for me, the great part was watching that transition of confidence. And even to the point, the next door neighbor was also the daughter of the grandmother. They watched, and I think they were so pleased with what was happening, that they were eager, and they ran out and filled out an application to get on the list to have their house done. So it was great to see everybody kind of come together and change their views on it.
It's not unlike often you have families that know your work
unfortunately, there are lots of things we don't have time to tell you about that happen at ASP every single year.
For example, doing our JJJ each night, that's our Joy, Junk, and Jesus, and for our moments each day.
Playing football in the rain with Logan and Alex and Alexis at our site, or basketball with Ethan at the other site.
Making a sign for Alexis for her clubhouse and how she loved it so much she grabbed it and hugged it to her chest.
Getting ice cream absolutely every night, no matter what.
It was at a place, it was local, called Mom Paws. They had this old-fashioned car show, a karaoke night, and a bluegrass night where we danced with the locals.
Or the Thursday night picnic where all of our families get together for a BBQ in a nearby park and we all meet each other and play.
Or the fact that the Stevens family made us a big homemade lunch every day that we were there, made with fresh veggies from their garden. They shared all the little they had with us. We were overwhelmed by their generosity.
The week was filled with some small, fun stories, but also some really big, important ones. For example, at our site, the roofing site, one story that stands out to me the most occurred while our group was working. I was on puppy duty at the moment, and Nadine, the great-grandmother living in the house, who was very ill, and she was limited to her bedroom and her front porch, had a doctor or nurse come visit her like twice a week. And I remember hearing the doctor say, Nadine, you cannot smoke anymore. You have to stop smoking. It is hurting you. It is hurting your family. I mean, you know, everybody in the family smoked. Everybody around there smoked. And I remember coming back out later, and I saw Nadine sitting on the front porch smoking. And it was really hard at first. It made me really upset because I was thinking, what are you doing? You need to stop doing this. You need to help yourself. And I got mad because I was like, we're here to help, so shouldn't we be helping? And it was really frustrating. But at the same time, we have to remember, I didn't really come to this realization until way after the mission trip. But we are there to help and to do what we can, but we're not their saviors. We're not their guardian angels, and we're not there to fix their entire lives. We're just there to do what we can, which is our best, and that's all we can do. And it was hard, but it was something that I had to realize much later.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I've got one last story to talk about for you guys today. On the Hazard trip 2 years ago, where you stay, there's other groups of other churches of ASP people going to help, and so we were staying in a school with another group that had like 75 kids. It was crazy. And one of their leaders, one thing that we've kind of touched on but not talked about too much is that this is really physical, hard work that we're doing every day. And that's something that's really amazing and wonderful to get to do, but also exhausting and like really difficult to do at times. And so one thing that I think was really special to me on the trip is that one of the adult leaders from the other group came around to all the sites and washed our feet on the Thursday we were there. And we all go to church during Lent and hear the Maundy Thursday story, and we all get our feet washed, but we all have like painted toenails, and to be honest, we all like wash our feet before we come because we're all a little nervous about it. But on this trip, like, we're wearing these, I don't know if you can tell in the pictures, not that one, but you wear these clunky big work boots, and you're crawling under houses or on top of roofs, and it's dirty and it's like not clean, and so you have these sore, tired, disgusting feet. And this man just came over and washed all our feet, and it was this kind of God moment where God was just right there in that moment where you finally understood the story of the disciples and how the feet washing really is, and just this service to others is also a service to yourself. And I don't think I've ever felt closer to God than on a mission trip, and my mom's a priest. So like, we talk about God a lot at my house. But these trips are something really special, so just wanted to say that.
Okay, we're all set. If you guys want to stick around and ask us questions, I'm sure people would love to answer. 3 of our senior girls have to go do sermons again. But thank you so much for your time and attention. And we've really felt the last 4 years there's been a lot of support for these trips. And they're so special, and we feel so honored to continue to make them a part of this community. Thank you.